everyone, it's Lexie. So in today's video, I'll be sharing with you the worst books of 2023. And I always enjoy making like kind of yearly wrap-up videos because it's always fun to kind of just reflect on the reading that you did over the past year. And overall, this was a really good reading year. There weren't very many kind of misses or books that I didn't really enjoy. So these are books that there's one in particular, I guess two in particular that I didn't really enjoy, and then two that I just were disappointed in. So these were like kind of the worst books of 2023. For the most part, I've gotten really good at just DNFing books that I'm not enjoying. So it gets harder and harder for me to kind of compile these books at the end of the year. But for the most part, I'll kind of mention which ones which I gave lower reviews for. So yeah, without further ado, let's get started. First up, I have The Stories We Tell by Joanna. I listened to this on audiobook, and I think this is like, again, I listened to this in January, and this is by far the worst book that I read in the entire year. I felt like the opening kind of chapter was really interesting and talking about how these stories really make us who we are. Like, I felt the opening chapter was great, and then the rest of the book kind of sucked. It was very kind of surface level and just very repetitive, and it was just not really fun to read at all. It was, like I said, the worst book that I read of this year, and it was just really annoying. It was like very surface level and talking about how she's like, you know, how she was always bullied, but look where she is now. And I felt like there weren't any stories. Like, where are these stories that she was talking about that have made us, like, the stories that make us who we are? And she didn't really talk about these stories, so it was very disappointing. Like I said, I like her cookbooks, but I don't think I would read any of their like memoirs or other books. Next up, I have Highly Suspicious and Unfairly Cute by Talia Hibbert. I love her Brown Sisters trilogy, so I was really excited when she had a new release coming out, but I think kind of where this kind of went off is that it's geared towards a more younger audience. I would say this is more teenage kind of focused, whereas the Brown Sisters trilogy is very much geared towards adults, and I feel like this is where I kind of had the issues where it's like I couldn't really care with the characters with a lot of like their troubles and, like, you know, applying for university, and there's a lot of very miscommunication that I felt very immature, and I just had a really hard time really kind of caring for these characters and the situations that we're in, just because it felt too young for me, and I think that was the biggest issue that I had with this. Obviously, I really love this author. I really think she has a good job at writing really fun romances, but I don't think I was the target audience or like demographic for this one, and I think that's why it fell short for me. Next up, I have Beach Read by Emily Henry, and I think this is my least favorite of Emily Henry's books. And before I forget, I get Highly Suspicious and Unfairly Cute 2 stars, just so you can kind of tell my ranking, and then now we're kind of moving into the 3-star category. So Beach Read, I gave 3 out of 5 stars, and I thought it was just fine. I feel like with Emily Henry, it is very much hit or miss. In particular, I really loved Happy Place. Like, that one is by far my favorite, and I like enjoyed People We Meet on Vacation, and like the other two were just fine. This one is my least favorite, and I think part of it is just the characters in here. I didn't really feel that tension or the emotional impact that I've had with some of her other books, and yeah, I just couldn't stand the main characters in this one. I didn't really feel that spark or that chemistry that I have felt in other romance books, so I felt it to be very unbelievable, and I just couldn't really care for these characters. And I feel like a lot of the time there's like a woe is me mentality with the female protagonist. In this case, I found it to be very annoying. And I did enjoy Book Lovers, but I said Happy Place is kind of where I really enjoyed it, and I felt like this one, I feel like is probably one of her most popular ones, and the one I like didn't enjoy that much. So yeah, this one just didn't really connect with me, and Emily Henry in general is a hit or miss author with me. So I think that's probably where these issues kind of stem about. So yeah, this one was just kind of a fine, you know, read, but it was kind of disappointing at the same time, especially because I really love Happy Place, but this one was just kind of meh. And lastly, I have Cultish, and this was a book that I was really excited to read, and I've always been kind of like fascinated with the psychology or the, you know, science, I guess, behind cults, and like the kind of psychology of how people can be kind of brainwashed in a way. And this book is geared towards how language is used in a way to get people to, you know, be drawn to cults, and like what are the specific languages that, like, you know, CrossFit people use, which is kind of like a fitness cult versus like very religious cults. And I think kind of the linguistic side of cults and learning more about that would have been interesting. But in this case, I felt like it just talked more about cults and not necessarily the linguistic side of things. So I felt like it was very kind of false advertising in this case, where it's like it's gonna say like, oh, in this chapter we'll talk about like the language of it, but she never really did. I did find like that learning about the different cults, and you know, they talk about Scientology and like CrossFit and all these other religious ones, and kind of the psychology that was used by these cult leaders, which was really interesting. But again, it didn't focus on the language, which is what this book is kind of geared towards, which I thought was disappointing, even though I did find it very fascinating. I feel like for a book that's like talks about, like, even in the title or like the tagline of the book, it talks about the language and the words that are used to kind of draw people into cults, and this one didn't really talk about it. So it was very kind of disappointing in that aspect. It was very interesting, but I felt like the focus or the scope of this book didn't really kind of align with what it was promising, which is why it was kind of a big disappointment in that aspect. I did find it really interesting, but again, it was a letdown in terms of what it kind of stated it was out here to do. So yeah. So that's it, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments below what some of the worst books that you read were in 2023 and all of that fun stuff. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, and I will see you guys next time. Bye, guys.